Go further with the American Express Business Gold Card. Earn 3 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels when you book through AmexTravel.com. Whether your destination is a business conference or a client meeting, your purchases will help you earn more points for future trips. Experience more on your travels with Amex Business Gold. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold Card. Built for business by American Express.
K-pop demon hunters Haja Boy's breakfast meal and Huntrix meal have just dropped at McDonald's. They're calling this a battle for the fans. What do you say to that, Rumi?
It's not a battle. So glad the Saja Boys could take breakfast and give our meal the rest of the day.
It is an honor to share.
No, it's our honor.
It is a larger honor.
No, really. Stop.
You can really feel the respect in this battle. Pick a meal to pick a side.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. At participating McDonald's while supplies last.
Pepsi Prebiotic Cola in original and cherry vanilla. That Pepsi taste you love with no artificial sweeteners and 3 grams of prebiotic fiber. Pepsi Prebiotic Cola. Unbelievably Pepsi.
Hey guys, how you doing? It's Mick Tully for Woma TV. First of all, before we do anything, if you can, just reach down there somewhere. It's around there. There's this bell icon. That means you get an alarm, which means that every time if you've subscribed to us, you'll get notified straight away when we've got a new episode. If you haven't subscribed, that's my gentle hint for you to subscribe. Right, guys, today we've got an absolute dream for me. He's the sort of guy that needs no introduction, but if you know anything about judo, you'll know who this guy is. He's the one and only Wayne Lakin. Wayne, how you doing?
Good, thank you, Mick, and thanks for that really nice introduction.
Well, that's it. So the thing is, to me, you first got on my radar through the old Martial Arts Illustrated magazines. It was bizarre because you're like 6 miles down the road from me, 7 miles down the road from me. But judo at the time and karate, we had this thing, judo play with fighters. And you were the first guy ever that really got the player mindset to me. We've talked about it in private loads of times over it. So, as I said, in the magazine, Jeff Thompson was one of the first guys to champion you a little bit through his connection to Neil Adams. Mm-hmm. So I'm throwing out huge names here. So we'll start right at the beginning. Yeah. How did you start martial arts?
So started at a local club near where I live now. Actually, I've not moved that far. It was a very, very local club, Battling Brook Judo Club. I was bullied at school, and again, I talk about this lots about being bullied at school, but not the bullying that everybody thinks bullying is. Everybody thinks bullying is fisticuffs in the playground. They think it's physical, and it's always physical, and it's not. It's that bullying that sort of just chips away at you a little bit. So my mum and dad took me to loads of different clubs that they could find at the time, whether it be karate, boxing, whatever, taekwondo, and I didn't like them. I found the walking up and down halls very, very boring for me, and they took me to judo. And I thought it looked like wrestling with pajamas on, and I thought this is a bit of me, and I'll give it a go. The first club we went to was Cedars, and I wouldn't walk in. So they went back to the drawing board. They didn't give up, even though I was crying. And then we ended up at a little club called Battling Brook Judo Club, which was just a little community club, as there were back, what would it have been? 80s, early 80s. Yeah, it's got to be early 80s, 81. Yeah, 81, wow. 82. And it was in a school hall where the coach put the mats down every Friday or every Tuesday or whatever day it would be, the canvas mats. And it was just a one-man band who was, I say again, he looks as, I saw him about 5 years ago. He looks the same age as when he was teaching me back when I was 8. I don't think these martial artists from back in the day age. And that was basically it, really. That's how we started that. And I was there for 2 or 3 years. And it was just a little community one.
But you know what the mad thing is? My wife went to Battling Brook School as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
I never knew that. Obviously, he's from Hinckley. Yeah. I never knew it was the same school, man.
Yeah.
So That is crazy.
Yeah,
that,
same school.
That is mad. So the bullying thing.
Yeah.
So how did it? What was it? Was it physical, or was it just a mental thing, or
I think
what was it?
Both. I think a bit of both. You get a bit of. I mean, luckily, I say luckily, unluckily, I had a fast mouth, but I had faster legs. So I think some of it was brought on by myself. And again, I always say this. I think everybody's bullied at some point in their life, whether it be at work, whether it be at school, whether it be whatever it may be. There's some kind of bullying somewhere.
Yeah.
And it can be unrecognizable. But I was being bullied. It was a bit physical, but again, some of it was brought on by myself, some of it not. And that was one of the reasons to go to judo. I will point out it didn't help, not in the immediate sense, because obviously by the time I was any good, I was 16, 17 and already left school. So, but I suppose as a confidence booster, I guess it helped.
Well, it's so funny because when you were saying about the fast mouth and the faster legs, I was exactly the same, but I didn't realise it at the time. So yeah. I was under the impression that I was this like something out of a movie. I was this poor tragic figure that was just getting badly maligned, trying to live my own life. And then I'm like, no, actually, I was a little shit, really. And if I'd have just learned how to keep quiet, it's the old Ernest Hemingway line, isn't it? It's only as we get older we notice this, where it's like it takes 2 years to learn how to speak, and probably 55, 56 to learn how to listen. And then, it's really, really starting to get to me. So what was it about the judo that kept you?
Do you know what? And I don't think it was. I think when you walk in and you watch a martial art, no matter what it be, it's the atmosphere that grabs you in that instant.
Yeah.
After that, it's the coach that keeps you.
Yeah.
Now, I would say no matter what sport, and I've took Freddie to sports, my lad, and you'll have done the same, Mick, and most people watching, listening will have done the same. If you've done any kind of sport, you take your child and you go, I'm not keen on basketball, or I'm not keen on football, but this coach is great because he captivates them, he engages with them, he loves what he's doing, and you can see that. So I think the out of the martial arts that I'd seen, judo was the most captivating because it was hands-on. For me, it was hands-on and it felt like it was physical. And the second thing was the coach seemed decent. He was good. He was an old boy, looked like he knew what he was doing. And like I say, I think that was what captivated it. But I think it's the coach. It's the same as when we talk about teachers these days. There's good teachers and bad teachers, but the kids, the ones that get captivated are the good teachers, aren't they? They're the ones that can relate really well. They can deliver what they've got to deliver really well. And that's what we all, I suppose, as coaches aspire to be.
Yeah. So what is it then? If you're going from just training with a local old boy, how do you get into the orbit of like Neil Adams? Because that's our Sunday League footballer. And they go, oh, by the way, no, I'm having a bit of a kickabout with these lads, Messi, Beckham, Maradona, especially in our country. Yeah. You know what I mean? How did that happen?
So there was a transfer between in judo, and I guess it might be the same in karate or other martial arts. There's a main national governing body, which is the British Judo Association.
Yeah.
Then there's a couple of breakaway little associations that do stuff. There's the Amateur Judo Association, the British Judo Council, and I left Battling Brook just because I needed a bigger club. I wanted more nights to train. I wanted to take it a little bit better than the local old boy who was running that club. So I moved up to that. And then when I got to about 14, 15 at this other club, and I was competing quite regular at Amateur Judo Association, the Nationals and the Beatrice Judo Council Nationals, and winning these kind of events. And one of my coaches, Anthony, he was he'd been around the fringes of the British Judo Association, doing the British Opens and some of these tournaments. And it was our local club championships. And I think I was 15, and I beat the coach. in a tournament, and to this day he still says he slipped on a bit of sweat or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
we have a big joke about it, and it's great because I still go to the club now. And he pulled me to one side, and this is the mark of a great coach. He said, Wayne, we need to move you on to another dimension. We've done all we can here. You're beating the coaches. You're doing a lot more than what we're doing. You're always welcome back. You know, we want you to keep you come back, but you've got to find other clubs. And at the time, my dad was a builder, and he was working on a building site with a guy called Dave Finley, who has very sadly passed away. And Dave Finley was on the British team, and he worked in Hinckley, and he was a Hinckley guy, big guy. He worked the doors. He did cycling. He did tug of war. He did strongman events. He was just a local character. And he said, "Oh, I'll go to judo." And my dad was like, "Oh, where'd you go?" He goes, "Oh, I'll go to Solihull." And my dad went, "Oh, okay." What we found out later was actually Dave Finley didn't drive, and he just needed a lift. So we were obviously going. And at 15, I then started training with Olympians, Dennis Stewart, Kerith Brown, and then also there with Saturday TV wrestlers, Ringo Rigsby, Crybaby Face, Jim Breaks. These guys were all training at this Solihull judo club. And I was 15, and I was getting absolutely hammered. And again, that was the first break into these guys, these elite athletes. And then I started training at Coventry Judo Club just on a Wednesday evening. But back then it was just it was at the back of the Burnt Post, but it was still the old church. And a guy called Brian Perryman at the time was living there, and he was on a canal boat, and it was a bit ran down, and it stunk of sweat, and there was blood up the walls. It was just great. It was just one of them environments you go, this is amazing. And so I started training there. And then one night, everybody stopped training, and Neil Adams had walked in. And then it was announced that he was going to take over the club. So I just happened to be there at the right time, at the right place. And then he then went from there to Coventry Baths, I think it was. And if I remember rightly, the old Coventry Baths was the one that was shaped like an elephant, wasn't it?
Yes.
It's still there?
Yeah, it's still there.
And we went to there while the Coventry Judo Club was being done up. And then they went back, and I was just training there, I don't know, once or twice a week at the time.
And was this before, I'm being a geek here now, was this before his Future Fitness place or his health?
So that's the same place. So,
right.
So the Coventry Judo Club at the back of the Burnt Post is the same place as where the full-time school was, the Future Fit, Neil Adams Centre of Excellence. That was all actually in the same place, which was at the back of the Burnt Post. Yeah. That was all the same. So he'd walked in and bought that facility. Yeah. And I think it was almost, I think it was gifted to them by Coventry Judo Club because they owned the building. And it was all done up. And then, and I think I've been training there about 2 years, 15, 6, about a year and a half. And that's when he started his full-time school.
So we're talking like 85, 86?
Bit late, 88.
88.
Yeah, 88 to 88, I would imagine, yeah.
Well, it's so funny because I've said before in a few interviews, I used to see Neil out in Memorial Park out running at the same time as me because his gym sort of backed onto Memorial Park almost.
That's right. Yeah.
Just so I used to have a conversation with him, and I'd be talking about karate and everything, and he was really, really gracious because he never turned around. He never turned around and said, "I'm Neil Adams. Do one, you loser." You know what I mean? It was like I was just some idiot white belt 16-year-old. So no, I would have been 17, 18. So I might have been a purple or a brown belt even at that stage. Yeah. But yeah, it was like you've touched on the BJA, which depending on what way you look at it and which way you fall on the side of their I don't know, I want to say benevolent gaze. We could call it favoritism in some cases. You know what I mean? That organisation is either loved or hated by people just for being so polar. And it's sort of nowadays in BJJ especially, everyone's talking about politics and especially newbies, like me and you being around the grappling game forever. Where you see these guys going politics, and I'm like, I saw it 35 years ago. What's happening now is that. And what was it with BJA? Was it the fact that they liked the plucky underdog thing that they had sort of going on, which was nobody there was actually a real professional? Because that was the one thing that I've always noticed about judo. A judoka was never a pro athlete. It was always wanted to be a pro, but didn't want to give them the money to be a pro. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't know what happened right at the beginning of all the history. I'm not probably the right person to speak to. There's stuff out there, but I think when it all started, the BJA was the recognised national governing body. So they got all the funding from the government.
Yeah.
And then people fell out. And I think it was, I don't even know their names, to be fair. I know that they're all up and around. I know Hasaka was one. He went up to the BJC, and then was it Watanabe? I think he went over, and there was just this split. And Tani, Robin, what was the old man? There was a Robin Otani's dad. They all came over, and these were pure, like the Japanese had come over, and they didn't like the politics part of it. So that's where all these breakaway associations, and I think it firstly was the British Judo Council. And then what happened was after the British Judo Council, the AJA then started, which was the Amateur Judo Association, to try and keep that almost amateur rather than professional. The BJA was seen as a more professional, but because they were getting all the internationals, you could only go to the Olympic Games if you were British Judo Association.
Yeah.
So it isn't the same now, because you can be part of any association and the licenses kind of intermingle. Yeah. So you can now do it, but at the time you couldn't. So you had to be BJA if you wanted to go anywhere, because they didn't even recognise the other associations.
But it's so funny, because it's like I often used to think, this was an exclusively a UK sort of thing, and then I found out it's not even a Western thing; it's just a people thing. It was like in karate, you had the EKB and you had the EKC, and then you had all these guys. And in some ways, I always used to think it was by design, because you had like Frank Brennan, who was this amazing fighter in the KUGB, but he could never ever fight, say, a Vic Charles.
Yeah,
because but it's like different. It's like rugby league and rugby union, and then
I think Taekwondo have just gone through the same thing for the last games, didn't they?
Yeah,
there was loads of people that weren't the right associations, but were beating people in the same kind of thing. But because they weren't, I think everybody will go through, and I think Jits will go through it as well. Don't get me wrong, or they are going through different things, because they'll never agree on a national governing body. So you're going to struggle to then get this into an Olympic format. They're going to, unless they all amalgamate and do something with it, I think they're going to struggle. And I think that was the whole thing with the BJA.
Well, that's the thing especially with jiu-jitsu right now, because it's the Wild West. Me and you both know it's like, I can lay it. We'll touch on it in a minute, but I can lay claim to a little bit of like not shoehorning you into forcing you to go to jiu-jitsu, but like just turning around saying, "Dude, I can't believe you." And then we started a bit of an adventure on the BJJSF. But it's that whole thing with jiu-jitsu. It's really funny because it's the Wild West since Gracie Barra. And it's so funny because the minute one person left Gracie Barra, boom, the dominoes fell. Everyone was like, wait a minute, what have I been listening to it for years? And then it's that classic, it's funny because with me, I've still got friends of mine who were Gracie Barra. I love being in it, to tell you the truth. I like the ethos behind it. I understood that the bigger they got, the more professional they needed to be, which is certain stuff like, right, okay, if you're with us, you have to wear this uniform. You got to do this. Because, you could be Lionel Messi, but you turn up wearing an Aston Villa kit to play for Barcelona. It's just not going to work, So I get that. But then some of the control stuff that came in, and then it's the whole thing where it's like, oh my God, I didn't realise I was in a cult until I was in a cult. That isn't me, by the way. I never felt like that. But yeah.
I disagree.
All right.
In the bit of, right, you have to wear the uniform, you have to do this, you have to do this. Now you think about from a judoka mentality, or were you trying to get this jiu-jitsu into an Olympic Games, right? Unless you've got the best club in the country and you can produce fighters, how are you meant to do randori? How are you meant to spar if you can't go and compete against but you can't. How are you going to make that pull? So if you read anything by something like Bounce by Matthew Syed or The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle, if you read those and look at that talent pool, unless you own that talent pool, how do you then get better as a mediocre martial artist? So if and that's what jiu-jitsu does. It's alienating, because you pay you pay £80 a month or £70 a month or £55 a month, whatever it may be, but you can only train at that gym.
Yeah, but you see, well, this is the one thing that I've got, which has been personally for me very important, as you know, which is the whole you can't cross train, or why are you cross training? And I'm like, with me, it's nothing more sinister than I want to train with my sons, who, my youngest son, Max, we were only on about this yesterday. Max trains at Morales, where our dear friend, mutual friend, Toby Wankanobi is at, right? Yeah. And I said to him, how's it going? He goes, well, it's like this, Dad. He goes, I either roll with white belts that are 15 kilos heavier than me, right, and get hammered, or I go and roll with blue belts and purple belts who are better skilled than me. I'm getting hammered, but I'm getting hammered by technique. So he's gone to a gym which is only up the road from me. And the reason I'm saying this is because I want to train with him. And then my son's training with Ben Robson's jiu-jitsu over at Faber. And then, you know me, I've always been like you, Wayne. You turn up, and the only thing that really should have been, and I'm going to quote Spud on this. So Ben Robson turned around once and he says, you know what my uniform policy is? He goes, is it clean? And I'm like, what? And he goes, as long as it's clean, you turn up. When you roll in, you're not going to be one of those, neck cranking retards, are you? And I'm like, no, I'm not. And he goes, right, okay, then you can train. So the cross training part, I do get that, which is going to lead us on to, I remember us having a conversation, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, because I'm skipping way forward on your. I'm waiting because I'd like to touch on the connection with, especially through Jeff and some of the Animal Day stuff and the daytime training that he was doing at Neil's, which we'll talk about later, which you were, like myself, smart enough to know was existing, was smart enough to observe it and be around it, but was really smart, in my opinion. And as I always say to Al Pearson, like Al did the Animal Days, but those daytime sessions where the guys were just beating each other up and killing each other, it's got nothing to do with intelligent training whatsoever. And all I saw at the end of it was a load of guys who were, admittedly tough, but did they learn anything? And after the first 2 lessons of knowing that you're tough, you don't need to know that anymore. But we are going to fast forward to, and really, it's believe it or not, it's one of the main reasons that it's not reason. That's not the best way to term this. One of the things I really wanted to get you to talk about more than anything was your raison d'etre to get into BJJ at your age, right? When me and you had a conversation, and it was, and I love you like a brother, right? And it was so cool because we're chatting away, and you were like, "This is going on, this is going on," and it was funny because I've had a load of people that have got into jiu-jitsu, and I said, "So what is it?" And I'm expecting, the midlife crisis bit at our age, we get a bit of that, right? So I'm getting it, and I'm thinking to myself, so what is it? Is it, is it the fact that you're looking around and your children are getting older, which therefore that redefines you? Now you're not a young man, you're an older man. That role in life, or decisions I made or decisions I didn't make, and I'm really stretching this out because that's what a lot of people are like. And then with you, I turned around and I said, so what is it? What is it that's making you feel a little bit down? The fact that is that you want to sharpen the tools to make sure you're still able to go. And I hope you don't mind me saying this. What I loved about you is you turn around and go, the main reason, I got up one morning and I didn't have abs anymore. And I just loved it because the minute you turn around, I was expecting something way bigger, to me. And you were like, I've just always prided myself on having an 8-pack. And I woke up one day and I didn't have it. So I know I've done that massive preamble, but the jiu-jitsu was, if you don't mind, if you're going to tell us when it came on your radar and you saw it more than just a load of guys who avoided tachiwaza and had a ship throwing game, Because you know yourself as judokas, you see a guy pull guard and you were like, what is this? I'm now telling people I play golf because I when people they see them butt scooting, I'm like, that is what I do. So when is it that you looked at jiu-jitsu and then went, okay, now this is actually where I need to be? That was a massive intro into that. But
there's a two-part answer here. The first part answer was it first came onto the radar in 1994,
right?
I think. And I was sat with Neil Adams at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. And we're there at this big Olympic Training Center and we're eating food. And on this big screen, it all opens up, massive screen. And it was the UFC. And we were chatting about it. And Hoist Grace was on. And he got a kit on. And it was still early days. It was still all this. And it was at the times when I think we'd already met and we were still chatting. And I was doing stuff with Jeff and we were talking about jiu-jitsu, Machados, and Jeff going out to Vegas or wherever he went and taught and stuff. We were talking about that as this UFC is going on. And we're watching it. And I sort of said to Neil, I said, mate, I said, this isn't going to last in this format. It can't last in this format. Because again, you go back to the animal days and you go like, you know, this is just a one-on-one fight to the death, if you like. Because there's no rules. There's no, it's going to get boring. You're going to get one elite player and they're going to get mismatched. It isn't going to be great. How right I was, by the way, because I said they're going to put in rounds and they're going to put in weight categories. They've got to. So it's going to change. I'd love to have seen the no-gi and gi split, but I didn't. But that we were talking about it then. So that's when it first came onto the radar. And then when you start investigating it, and the Gracies were then actually doing stuff with the Brazilian judo teams, and they were doing a lot of judo. And then as it went on, and if we fast forward to what, I don't know, how long ago was it? 2 years, 3 years, nearly 3 years ago. And again, our good friend Toby, and although there is a one of the reasons was the abdominals. I woke up one day and I hadn't got abs, and I think I was around 50, well, just under 50. Woke up and I started to get fluffy, as you do. But there was a more sinister reason. I think I was struggling with depression. I think I was struggling with I was very close to having alcoholism. Do you know what? I was very close to being an alcoholic. My mum had passed away probably 2 years before, and I don't think I'd finished grieving. And after, do you know what? I've just had a conversation with my other half, because I know we'll get onto it, but I was in my book. Obviously a very therapeutic process, and I'd only really just realised that I've got an addictive personality.
Right. I could have told you that when we met.
Well, mate,
that's how we did.
Yeah. She said the same thing. She was like, how have you only just realised? I was like, I just thought it was normal.
Yeah.
I thought me owning 10 judo kits, 20 gis and chasing 1,200 rounds a year was dedication. Yeah. And I was like, wow. So I think that abs was part of it, because I think there's also there was a body dysmorphia involved. Yeah. And I think that was all part of it. And again, I don't want to bring the whole podcast down or anything like that, but I'd literally caught myself drinking out the bottle one night, and the next day I was like, I'd seen it in a mirror. We've got like a drinks cabinet downstairs, and it's next to a big mirror, and I literally caught myself drinking out the bottle. And I went to the gym the next day, and I just happened to be passing Toby on the stairs. You know, my stairs got coffee and everything. And literally, and again, I describe it much better in the book. I basically passed him on the stairs and I said, I'm done. I'm checking out. I've had enough. And he went, mate, what was that? And I didn't even realise I'd said it. I didn't even realise. And Toby wouldn't let me go anywhere further. He just took me back upstairs. We had a coffee, and he was probably the best mate you could ever wish for at that point in anyone's life. He just listened. He didn't say anything. He said, oh, look, Wayne, I've started doing jiu-jitsu. Would you teach me some judo? Now, if you've ever done jiu-jitsu with Toby, he doesn't need judo. He's a very capable martial artist. Yeah. He's a very handy lad. He's a very good lad. And I was like, no, I'm not interested. And then he went, I'll pay you. Well, Mick, you're the same as me. I'm a bloke. And he went, I'll pay you. I was like, might be interested now.
Yeah.
So that day he texted or phoned me every hour just to make sure I was steady and was okay. The next day he came in and put 300 quid on the table and said, there's my PT. I want you to teach me some judo for jiu-jitsu. And again, if you look back at my addictive personality, we started with 6 mats in the corner. 6 months later, I've got a full-time setup in a dojo upstairs, which is fully matted.
Yeah.
So again, so that's how it all started. And then I enjoyed putting that metaphoric white belt on again, although I could still do a bit.
Yeah.
I was a white belt, and again, I think I'm a very respectful martial artist. I wear a white belt. I started going over to Lutterworth with the guys over there, and then obviously everybody seemed to like, and I think I just started at the cusp of the split of the Gracie Barra stuff.
Yeah, you did, yeah.
And then I started going there, and then bumped into yourself again, and then was bumping into people I hadn't seen for a long time, and then doing some jiu-jitsu, and then doing some judo. And again, I'm in the same as you, Mick, we're in a very fortunate position in that although there's a very closed network to jiu-jitsu clubs, I tend to be a nomad and allowed to train anywhere. Everybody seems to go, oh, Wayne, you want to come and train? And even to this day, you know, I go to Alento Birmingham. I'll still pop in at Lutterworth. I go down to Jeff Lawson's place, Ipon Gym in Bournemouth. I go to Andy Roberts' place in Camberley. You know, and I'm quite lucky that I say quite lucky. I'm very fortunate in that the coaches that I tend to have. I mean, Jeff Lawson's a legend in himself. Andy Roberts is a legend in himself. You know, these guys have now started doing judo as well. So Jeff's back on the judo circuit. I think he competed at the weekend at the English Open. At the same time as Andy Roberts, I think. So, you know, so I've been in that was the reason really for me for starting jiu-jitsu. It wasn't in a sense of that, but I've really enjoyed putting the metaphoric white belt on again and getting on the mat, and I started to learn again. And then I think the next breakthrough was hooking up with yourself again, because what I realized very quickly in the jiu-jitsu stuff was I'm not 20. And I know we've had multiple conversations, and that's where the old man jits kind of, you know, I started doing some t-shirts and I'm just about to re-release them. That whole, and what I really enjoyed, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, is when we started training together, and I had conversations with you and the instructors, all of them would teach something. And I'd be like, that's great, that. But now you're going to have to teach it for a 50-year-old.
Can't do that. Yeah, we've had that one.
My knee don't bend. And I remember Carl from Leicester Shoot, Carl Green, we love, and an amazing coach and an amazing grappler. We paid him to do some privates with me, Toby and Scott. And he did this wicked move, and me, Toby and Scott all just looked at each other and went, yeah, mate, you're going to have to teach that again for a 50-year-old, because my body does not move that way. And I still remember, you know, and we've done stuff on the mat at Birmingham with Andy and with Bugger, and it's going, that's great, but that isn't going to work for me. And that's when I started to realize actually what I could do again now, even in judo, is put the white belt back on and start relearning. Yeah. As an older athlete. Yeah. Because I think sometimes we forget that. I used to say it when I was coaching, actually. I used to say to the guys, when we're Randorian, don't just please remember, you've all got to get up for work tomorrow. Yeah. Yeah. That it's so funny. It's so funny you said that. I was teaching Carly today, and clocks went forward. I'm dating our podcast here by doing that. But the clocks went forward. So a couple of guys messaged, go, oh God, yeah, at 11 o'clock. They're like, oh God, I just didn't realise I slept in, yada, yada. So go there, small group, but luckily enough, all of my black belts, all the guys who actually teach for me were there as well. And I was like, right, okay, let's do this. And I was saying to him, I'm going back to all my fundamentals. So like in Carly, stuff that's just like literally an angle 1, angle 2 on a stick. And I said, but I've been looking at it completely different. Hour later, we're there, and I'm like,
I'm going back to notes from 25 years ago where I've written it. And when I read it, I'm like, wow, that reads like you understood it. And then when I'm doing it now, I'm like, you never knew what you were doing. That was literally a body mechanic motion for you. And it is so funny because it's like you said, me and you had it loads of times with Andy McCready, and like love training with Andy and all the guys over at Erdington, Alento Birmingham, give them the shout out now. But me and you would be there, we'd see it. And then I'd turn around to you, I said, at what point do I pull half guard, get you into lockdown and sweep you? Because that's all I've got, right?
Yeah.
And then I'll tag that bit on the end. But it's really funny you say about the metaphorical white belt, because that's going to open up two things that I'd like to your opinion on. First of all, I, like yourself, me and you have no impulse control. As you said earlier, when you were saying, I'm logging in 1,000 rounds, right? I'm going to get 1,000 rounds a year in. I was sparring. And it's so funny because I can put this as a bit of an aside to this. I think probably the second or third time me and you ever trained together and we rolled, and I came back and I said to my wife, I went, one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me in martial arts happened today. And she went, what was it? And I said, I rolled with Wayne Lakin. And she was like, you've known Wayne for years. And I said, but after the roll, he turned around and he said, Mick, I was really surprised. You're actually really good. And I was buzzing because and I'm not kissing your ass or anything. Yeah, dude, you're Wayne Lakin. It's like, if you turn around, if you came and you were doing some stand-up with me, some Muay Thai, and then I'm me coming back and go, God, Wayne can actually bang. Because for being predominantly known as doing striking, or as me and Jeff had it a few times about the Jeet Kune Do. He said, as much as I like it, nobody can be good at 27 different arts. And I'm like, it isn't 27 different arts. It's one art, but 27 different interpretations of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That was my JKD thing. But when you said that to me, I was like literally buzzing about that. But again, the 2 points that the white belt thing you got me was, first of all, so many guys that I know in martial arts who are our age, and they cannot even fathom the idea that a kid with 2 months training will kill them. So they won't get the white belt on. And then the other one is they don't appreciate the beauty of just learning a new skill. Mm-hmm. You know, when you walk in there and you like, and I've been very, very careful the way I say it, because what I do is instead of people that I know in martial arts, I always say about, the local tough guy that used to work on the door. Because I'd always say, all these guys, why don't you come and train with me? But they don't want to train, because if they train, then it shows that they've aged, shows that maybe they didn't have the skill set, because, you can be really tough when you're beating up a load of dudes who are just drunk. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so the metaphorical white belt thing, if you don't mind, I like to just go a little bit deeper into that for you. Because for me, I'm still loving it even now, because as a black belt in jiu-jitsu, do you know what I realised now? I realised that when I thought I knew something, I knew nothing. And now, not only do I know nothing, but a lot of the stuff I can't do, the way that jiu-jitsu's evolved, is that it's stuff that's, I wasn't going to sound like a really old man, but it's really beyond my ken. You know what I mean? It's like, I see it, I sort of understand it. It was like you saying with Carl Green, when we give him the shout out. I see Carl, I see what he does, I understand what he does.
Love it.
But I can't.
We can't do it.
It's never going to happen. No. So
I think for me, it was the white belt thing was, I'm a very respectful martial artist, and it's not my domain. So if I get onto a jiu-jitsu mat, yes, I've got a fourth dan in judo, and I'm a very capable, if you like, athlete, fighter, player, whatever you want to call it. But, when you start doing stuff like leg locks and single X guard, double X, whatever they're called, I don't even know their names because I can't do them. That's all new to me. So that's for me to go, right, look, yes, I'm a black belt in judo, and you can tell everybody that. I've got no problem with that. But actually, in your world, I'm still a white belt, because I haven't done. If you're going to spend 6 months on Juji Gatami, I might be your man to help you, but you're not. You're going to do leg locks. You're going to do some wrist locks. You're going to do stuff that I have never, ever done. Basics I've never done. So the way that you train, the way that you do it, and the way that you do stuff is new, and I should be putting a white belt on. However, there does come a double-edged sword with that, because if your coach doesn't tell your athletes that there is a white belt on that has got a little bit of a pedigree, they're almost setting themselves up with for a little bit of a failure. And it happened in jiu-jitsu, and I'm not going to say where, I'm not going to say who, but I was training, and they were actually teaching Jujigatami, and the guy underneath was a white belt, or he got like 3 or 4 tabs. And I've got this Jujigatami on, and I'm just taking my time. I'm just rolling through the motions. I'm pretty okay with Jujigatami. I'm okay with the movements. I'm okay with everything about it. As I should be, as spending 20 years with Neil, and the lad started correcting me on where my hand placements and stuff were, and I was like, "Oh, look, do you know what, fella? You do it onto me, because I'm okay with this." And he's like, "No, but you got it wrong. You're not actually hooking this in, or you're not doing that in." And I was like, "No, fella, I'm actually all right." But he wouldn't let up. He just wouldn't let it go. So I was like, "Right, okay, do you know what? Let's just do it." So we did it, and I've got a way that when I try and take the arm out, I'll put that much pressure on the elbow joint that they'll tap without even the arm coming out.
Yes, I know it.
And he went, and he literally was his feet was tapping, his legs were tapping, his hands were tapping. I think if he could have tapped his head, he would have done.
Yeah. And
I was like, right, you go. And I said to the guys, I said, look, you're going to have to tell them, because it's not fair. And we had conversations about that, and then I started. Obviously, I pick up stuff quite quickly. As Mick, if I started teaching you loads of judo, you would pick it up very, very quickly, because it's been around what we've done. So I was picking up these wrist locks, blah 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 blah, and I caught another lad in a wrist lock, and it was really from like a figure 4 arm lock into a wrist lock. So it was quite a simple kind of thing. The lad went absolutely nuts, because I was only a white belt. And he was like, "No, you can't do that. You're only a white belt. You're only a white belt. You can't do that." Now, to be fair to the coach, he then turned around and went, "Yeah, but you're a blue belt, and he's actually a black belt in judo, so I think you'll be fine. Yeah. Shut up and get on with it." So I think there is a double-edged sword, and sometimes it gets perceived very well, sometimes it doesn't. So I remember going down to Iponjin in Bournemouth with Jeff Lawson, and I always ring and I always ask if I can go on. Every time I go down, I don't just turn up. I'll always ask and say, "Am I okay to come on?" And I remember turning up, and I got my kit out, and I got I think I was a blue belt at the time, and I got my blue belt out, and he just looked at me and he went, "What is that?" And I said, "Oh, it's the grade I am." He went, "Not here." I was like, "Well, look, I don't really want to I'm not a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I'm a black belt in judo." He says, "Wayne, with all the greatest respect, you're not wearing that here." So I was like, "Right, okay, we do what it is." And I think I taught a class as well, because I always offer a class.
Yeah.
If I'm going down to train, I'll always offer. And I was teaching, and he says, "You're not wearing a blue belt. You wear your black belt to teach. If you want to swap it out when you do the randori or you do the thing, then you can, but you're not." So there is a double-edged sword, but I am very respectful, but I try and keep it within the realms of whose club it is, or whose association it is, and stuff like that. So
yeah, it's so funny you said it, because when you came over to Erlington, I worded up all the boys. And I said, "My mate's going to come over. The minute you look at him, you'll be able to tell he can rook a little bit. When you grip up, you'll realise." And obviously, again, you said about the double-edged sword. It's mad, because you don't want to go, because we've all got that mate. You know what I mean? It's like, it's that bit where he was a pro rugby player. You bring him in, and it goes one of two ways. And it's like, "Yeah, he played rugby, but yeah, this is jiu-jitsu." Or then he steamrolls through, and they go, "Fuck, dude, why didn't you tell me this guy was going to rip me one?" Right? And I'm like, "Right, okay." So I said it to the guys, and I cannot remember who it was. It might have been Remy, but it was one of the. Well, it might have been like my dear friend Rio. It was one of the guys, like great guys, really respectful, as you know these guys. Yeah. and it was I think the first takedown that you actually hit, I was watching you when we were doing stand-up. It was like simple Ashi Barai first sweep.
Yeah.
It was like walk, boom. Next thing, got these guys, and they're like, but I thought you said he was a judoka. And it was at that point that I was going, lads, it's not just big Tayatoshis. I said, yeah, most really good judo players have the most basic of like tachi waza, but it works all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was, they were like, a couple of the guys were afterwards and go, man, what happened there? And I went, I did you not see? Like I told you at the time, you've got to watch out. So I had it with Neil Simpkin. A couple of guys like Chaz Hendry was a great example. He was a brand. So Chaz was a blue belt when I got there, and Chaz turned around and he said, "I just couldn't work it out." He walked in there and everyone's like, Neil's like, treat you like a rock star, and he goes, "You come out." He goes, "Well, gripped up, yeah, I could tell you'd done something, but didn't realise." And then that was that point where you go, "No, you got to remember." In my world, what I'm good at, I'm really, really good at, but I'm prepared to park it up now. And I didn't realise I was going to be parking up this long in jiu-jitsu because I'm, just as the skill level sort of got okay, then the body started declining. You know what I mean? But it was funny. That's going to lead me on to when you mentioned Toby and you mentioned the gym in Hinckley Unite, which I loved it there. When you initially started like the old man jiu-jitsu, so the old man jits, and you were like working with campaign for against living miserably, and it was initially it was just a rolling club, which was a couple of old guys meet up when you got a day off, go and do a bit of training. I don't know if you remember the time I brought my old apprentice Ollie with me, the little mixed race kid, and he came out and he went, "That's your idea of funny," because I turned up and you were like, you got a geese somewhere, haven't you? I actually have got one. Yeah, let me go and get it. And so what led you into starting up the rolling club? I already know the answer, but I like the way that you'll share it because I like the way that you frame it and how you say it. So
it started, like I say, with Toby, we were starting and Toby had got us rolling and then Scott joined in. And it was really to do with mental health. It was about, we wanted somewhere. I mean, these women. I sound really sexist because I don't mean to be, but I think Mickey Flanagan says it much better than me. Mickey Flanagan does a whole sketch on a woman. I'll have the girls round and they'll have a bottle of wine, and before long they'll know when each other's menstruating. They'll know who's having sex, who's not having sex, how they're feeling, whether their hormones are up or down, and they have this whole big conversation. And as blokes, we go to the pub and we go, "All right,
yeah."
and I think we talk about it, and again he'll go, so he'll go, his wife will go to him. You go, "Now, yeah, it might be. Who are you going with?" "Don't know." "Where are you going?" "Oh, just up the local." "Who with?" "Don't know." And you get back and she'll go, How was the pub?" "Yeah, it was all right." "Who was there?" Don't know." "What do you mean you don't know? Did you go?" "Yeah, I went." "Who was there then?" "Oh, Bob was there." "Oh, was he? How's Katie?" You went, "I don't know." "Well, did you not ask him?" You went, "Didn't even ask how Bob was." So that's us. We just don't do it. We don't talk about it. So what we tried to create was a bunch of guys who were all going to do something that we were not very good at the time. And we just, because I didn't really want to teach judo and I don't think I could teach jiu-jitsu, we literally just started this little rolling thing where we would do it. I bought a really expensive coffee machine so we could all sit down after it and have a coffee and just put the world to rights and just talk shit really about it. And it was just I mean, it started as just a group of lads, but then a couple of girls had come and it would just literally be, we would just get on the mat, we would roll. Every now and again somebody go, "Oh, I did this last night," or you would turn up and go, "Guys, you could do it this way," or we just, it wasn't formal. It wasn't, I say it wasn't formal. The times were set, but it wasn't formal. And it was just really about us being able to do something and sit out around afterwards and have a cup of coffee. And that's basically what happened. It was just rolling, and it was just a way of us getting together and having a coffee without us having a coffee and being men.
Yeah, it's so funny you said that. I dropped my son last night. Charlie's working in Qatar, so he was back for 2 weeks, and then obviously for Eid, and the Home Office were like advising 2 weeks ago to get out, and then they're like, "Oh no, school's back open, got to go back out." And we were driving down in the car yesterday, and we're on about. I put the sat nav on. I said to him, "Look, live in Coventry, got to go to Heathrow. I've got 2 options. I can go down there." I'm showing you that I'm illustrating the point that my son made, which was I put it on and I said, right, I'm either going to go down M6, M1, M25, Heathrow, M4, Warwick Bypass, M40, M25, Heathrow. And Charlie was like that. He goes, "But you know both of these roads, you know them really, really well. What's with the sat nav?" I said, "Sat nav is because I don't want any problems. I don't want to go down there and then realise that I had a much better option if I'd have taken the other option." And then Charlie said, he goes, "Oh, that's Steph funny." He goes, "There's this, he was on about some documentarian talked about it, and they were talking about women and men opening up and speaking to each other. And he's like, you got to take, for instance, there's a family wedding. And he goes, we're going to use that because you get 2 disparate groups together, put them in an environment, and somehow they have to get on with each other. And they're there for a big reason, which is none of you can play up or argue about anything because it's somebody else's big day." He says, so you get the women get together. By the end of the night, they're swapping addresses, add me up on Instagram, you're my new best friend. And he said, and for 4 hours at a wedding, you've just got guys standing there talking to each other about what motorway you used to get there. Yeah. And what motorway you're going to use to get back. Yeah. Charlie was saying to me, he goes, "But like, you're really dead open, Daddy. You speak about your feelings." And I went, "Yeah, ADHD." And he's like, "What?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Now I know." It's like, I'll tell people stuff about me and they're not even interested in it. But I'm like, you need to know this. Why? I don't know. Because I've got a brain that's screwed up somehow. But it's like, that's brought me to, first of all, one of the first times that we ever had to do any real business with you, like if we talk about like your day-to-day, week-to-week job, was you were at the, doesn't exist now, the Hinckley Sports Centre, and me and Al were doing our monthly masterclasses.
That's right.
And we started our masterclasses because everyone was doing them. Jeff was famously doing it. And then me and Al looked and we were like, well, we can't compete that we even wanted to compete with Jeff. It wasn't that. It was like, well, what is it that we can offer? So what we did was we immediately went and we were like, well, we know at least 12 really good martial artists. We're going to get them in and do a guest slot. Eddie Quinn, you were obviously one of them as well. But you were working at the time running the sports centre. Yeah. And I didn't even know that's what you did for a living. Like it was mad. You did it. So what I'd like to know is how you first got into sport, into that industry, and then how did it go from that to you having your own place?
So when we were training at Neil's, the bit he was good at is, I say he was good at, back then there was no income, it wasn't income generated, so we had to find our own way of making an income, and he would make us all do college. So we all had to do college. So I did my PT qualification back, I'll tell you how long ago it was my City and Guilds in Sport and Rec. So wow. We're going back. You kids that are listening won't even know what City and Guilds are these days. So I did levels 1, 2 and 3 at Loughborough College, and when I got out, when I was still competing, and there's a gym locally to us called it was at the time John's Gym, which was a big gym, a guy called John Auerbach, and his dad was Mick Auerbach from Coventry, who was used to train at the Fozil Road Judo Club, which been gone years, but apparently it was a very good judo club. And his dad won the Maccabea Games, is it?
Yeah.
So his dad won that. He was a 3rd dan in judo. And John basically said to me, Wayne, you can work at my gym. You can do it around your training. I'll pay you £1 an hour, but you can work as many hours as you want. At the time, I thought that was a great deal until I realised you're not going to earn that much money. But but he proper looked after me, John did. So that was where I started working in the industry. And then it just sort of went on from there. I think I went from John's to Clint's, which would have been Flex at the time on Fog Gosford Street.
Yeah.
This is where I met Jeff. And that was all, again, we've talked about that on a previous podcast where I met Jeff, started working with Jeff. Then I met Al. And then it sort of transpired from there. And then I think I went from Flex to the Motorhouse Hotel, actually, in Stratford-upon-Avon.
Right.
And lived there for 6 months. And then ended up coming back to Hinckley into the leisure centre as a fitness manager. So it all sort of like went from a backstreet gym round back to just a local gym sort of thing, and that's sort of how it happened. But and still there now. Well,
you see that this was right. The thing when I went over to Unite, and you had our dear friend, mutual friend Skelly. So Skelly was there. Chelsea was there.
Yeah.
So you had all of these top Olympians doing strength and conditioning. How did you get from working in, say, Motorhouse Gym, which is tourists, really, to go into there?
So that the stuff when I bought my own. Okay, I went from working in corporates, and I got headhunted with a chap called Andy T, who I still speak to today, and he ran Simply Gyms. And I was teaching at Boston Judo Club, which was my club at the time. And I remember saying to him, I said, we were chatting and he said, oh, what do you do for a living? And I said, oh, I work in gyms. I said, why? What do you do? He said, oh, I own them. And I went, mate, we should chat. He says, oh, yeah, don't worry, you're on my radar. He says, I'm just about to open a budget gym in Hinckley and I want you to run it. So we started talking about that. And I'd made, I don't want to blow my own trumpet. They wanted to open with 1,000 members and they wanted 2.5 at peak. 2,500 members. I opened at 2,500 and I had 4,000 at peak. So we literally creamed the town. And it was that big that Places for People had just built a new leisure centre in town. And they were like, well, we can't have this. We've just spent £15 million on a brand new leisure centre and we're losing money. So they just bought Simply Gym straight off the bat. I think they paid $2 million for it or something stupid. I don't know. And I was like, I don't really want to work for another corporate. So I handed my notice in and went home on a Friday. I Googled gyms for sale, and I saw United. I got no money. I didn't have any money to buy United, and I met the owner, and I knew him anyway because he used to work at John's with me back in the day. And I said, "How much do you want?" And he said, "Oh, I want 90 grand." I said, "It's not worth 90 grand." I said, "Don't be daft." And we settled on a price which was far, far, far less than that. And I said, "Oh, I haven't got that much either, actually." He said, "Well, how are we going to do this?" I said, "Well, look, you want to sell the gym, don't you?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I want to buy it." He said, "Yeah, okay." So I said, "I'll tell you what, I'll give you half the money, and then I'll pay the other half off over 2 years out of the money I make from the gym." And he went, "What?" I said, "Well, I'll give you half the money now, up front, and I'll pay you the rest off over 2 years." He went, "Yeah, right." So that's what we did. I paid him. I think I paid just under 40k for it in total, and I gave him 20 grand up front, which I got off a loan off Tesco, and then paid the rest off like that. And then what happened was just before COVID, I think 2019, 2020, I'd had the gym 2 years, and just before COVID, I'd started doing some stuff with British Judo, just bits and bobs, nothing too dramatic. Started helping out on bits of sessions and bits and bobs like that. And then Nakoda Smythe Davis came to me and said that she wanted some S&C work on the lead up to Tokyo. And then she started coming over with Chelsea. And then Nakoda got concussion, really bad, long-term concussion. So she was not looking great for the games, but Chelsea carried on. Then we had to get special permission from British Judo for Chelsea to carry on working with me because they've already got a strength and conditioning coach. So they got special permission to me work with Chelsea. But as that started going really, really well, other athletes started to drift across. So then Skelly started to come across and all the bits and bobs. And then Chelsea's training partners started to come across. So I think we ended up sponsoring I think 4 or 5 athletes in total. That's basically how it all happened. But then it grew and grew and grew. So then we had, I got a call from my friend who used to work at British Judo called Mark Beach, who said, Wayne, we need some help with badminton. Could you come down and prep the badminton players up to Tokyo? I thought, I don't really know anything about badminton, but okay, well, let's try that. So I went down there and I started working with badminton. So I was now working with British Judo badminton. And then as PT clients, as all this started to escalate, I'd have people go, oh, my daughter's a gymnast. Would you help do the S&C for her? And then I had another lady who said, oh, my daughter's just about to get onto the GB sailing team. Would you help her? So all of a sudden, I've gone from looking after Chelsea Giles and then Chris Kelly and then Nakoda and Emma Reed and Kelly Peterson Pollard. And then I've got sailors and I've got these sports coming in. So it just grew once I'd started one, it just went mad.
So you go from being predominantly a judoka, then going into gym management, which then parlayed its way into going, I don't want to be corporate, I want to be master of my own destiny. Then you go into strength and conditioning, which then I don't know if you can find any 3 things that are more disparate than judo, sailing, and badminton. I can't find the links.
No, there wasn't any. It was the links was you can me. I was the link. It was somebody had rang me about the badminton, somebody had rang me about sailing, and you know what? I'm a big fan of stepping outside your comfort zone, as you well know, and if you can step outside your comfort zone and go, right, do you know what? I don't have all the answers, and do you know I'm segueing this in. In my book, I do talk about the best coaches are not the ones that say that they have all the answers. They're the ones that say that they don't have all the answers, but you know what? I'll find them out for you.
Well, you know what? Now, this is the bit, right? So this is the greatest link we can get for why I've got you here, because me and you, I was training today and I was thinking about it because I knew we were having the podcast later. And we did a podcast at Dev's when I was still in person, sitting on the ring apron. And there were some gems in there. We'll stick a link in for any of the guys who want to listen to the audio. It was unreal. But I remember, and you'll find this really, really weird. So I was doing a job out Market Harbour way in the plastering business. And I was driving past and I was coming through Hinckley. And for some unknown reason, remember I rang you up out of the blue. I hadn't spoke to you for a bit. I rang you up. And we had it was a long chat, as they always are whenever I speak to anyone, but especially to you. It was a long chat, and it was because I said to you, I just haven't seen you on social media, haven't seen you, just checking to make sure you're all right. And with me, half of it is I was being a bit nosy, but secondly, I was more concerned than anything. Then you being you, Wayne, you turned around, and there's 2 things. As I said, the link about stepping out your comfort zone is ace, because you turned around and you were on the, I don't want to, there's no other way of saying it. I could, by speaking to you, I could tell that your trajectory was going back up this way, where at the very least it was going there on a decline for a while. And I knew nothing about any of it. As I said, it was when I went to book Unite for Aaron Davis's seminar that I have every year. And they were like, well, Wayne's not here anymore. And I was like, God, I really need to ring you up. We had the conversation. You were great. Then I didn't hear from you for a little while. And then you sent me a message with, I've done a thing. That was literally it. And a picture of the book. So this is the perfect opportunity to show me that book and explain to me where in your ADHD brain you decided that you would not just try and figure out your problems, but put them down, do the whole cathartic writing it down bit.
It was
and then sharing.
Yeah, it was bizarre. So believe it or not, I've always wanted to write a book. And if you would go back, how long ago did I meet Nathan Leverton? Years ago. Right, I met Nathan years and years and years ago, and I remember talking to him about books, and I remember saying, Nathan could write a book, and I think that's how all this even started. I can't even remember, and I was like, everyone's got a book in them. And I think that's how all this even started. I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. And I think that's how all this even started. Mick, you've got a book in. Everybody's got a book in them.
Yeah.
Right. And then we were talking. I was at Leicester Shoot Fighters, and I don't know if you remember, but there was a young lady there training called Adele who ran Fox Publishing.
Yeah.
And got chatting to her, and she said, "Wayne, I'd love you to write a book." And you know what? I was like, "Yeah, I'm not really academic enough. I don't think I can do this." My imposter syndrome kicked in, and it just didn't happen. And then the older I've got, and the more stuff I've done like this, with speaking to you and speaking to podcasts and doing bits and bobs, was more ticking my fancy to this book thing again. And I just didn't know how I was going to do it or how it was going to work. And then I did a podcast with the guys from Out the Darkness, which is Matt Piper, who used to be City. So I did their podcast, and he just released a book as well. And I was like, oh, everything's just like teasing me. It's just tickling me to do something. And I happened to be at United, and I was speaking to Steve, a guy called Steve Kelsey, who Steve is amazing. I love Steve to bits. He's you'll have rolled with him and not known it. He's he calls himself really old jiu-jitsu guy. But he goes over to Japan because his wife's Japanese, and
oh man,
you know what I'm talking about now.
Yeah, him and his son, they do this mad Ronin shit where they're like, oh, where are you? I was at the Budokan, and you're like, what?
Yeah,
and then it's like, oh yeah, we went and trained with Craig Jones, and I know exactly who he is because
he comes back and he sends you photos of him and Ari, and he's like, oh yeah, I was just at his gym.
Yeah,
and Steve will tell you himself he's not the world's greatest jiu-jitsu player, but he'll go and he'll roll and he'll go, and he's just randomly at these super high level things. Anyway, I was talking to him, and I said, oh, gee, I was talking to him about writing a book, and I said, I'd love to write a book. And he went, well, I've written 3. And I went, gee, no. And he said, yeah. He said, you know what my job is, don't you? I said, no. Do you know what? That's how rubbish we are. I've known him for like 10 years, and I don't know what he said, I'm a business psychologist. Yeah.
I didn't know this.
No.
Yeah.
So, and I went, right. He said, well, what about I sit down, I'll interview you, and I'll interview you, and we'll put 15 hours of tape together, and I'll create a book for you. And I went, Steve, don't tease me. Don't. And he said, no, we'll do it. He said, there is a problem. I'm moving to Spain. He said, so, but we can do it over Zoom. Technology these days, we can do it. So anyway, we did it. And that's out there. It's not out there yet, but that's there.
Yeah.
And then again, because I've got an addictive personality, I've got ADHD, and I can't do it tomorrow. I'm like, I can't keep waiting for this. I've got to do something myself. So we started a book which will be called Between Throws, because my life is between throws. Everything that I've done is between throws. So that's there, and that will come out later. And then I sat here and I was like, I really want to write a book. I want to do this myself now. So what I decided to do was to do a book, but not based on a life story. It's based on more to do with my imposter syndrome, doubting myself, the determination I've had to try and get through this. So it's called Paper Heart, Iron Grip. And the paper heart was meant to symbolize my sensitivity. I take things to heart. A bit like you, Mick, we're quite sensitive souls, really, because if we think we've upset somebody, that will kill us. It will just, we can't do it. Yeah. But we have to create this coping mechanism to allow us to step outside that outside that comfort zone, but still deliver. And you'll have done it. You'll have had 20 people on the mat, and you think, what? Why am I here? I'm just a guy from Hinckley. I'm stood in front of Chelsea Giles, Chris Skelly, Olympians, world champions, and they're like, right, Wayne, what are we doing? You tell me. You guys are the experts. So the iron grip is what has kept my paper heart from ripping, and so the book's called Paper Heart, Iron Grip.
Yeah,
and it's basically, I don't know, 10 years on the mat, 15 years on the doors, and 20 years in gyms and elite spaces. And it's just all the stories or all the experiences that I've had where I've gone, oh, so I have got an addictive personality.
Yeah.
Oh, that's imposter syndrome. Yeah. Right. And it's basically stories about really that. It's about and there's no timeline to it, so it flicks backwards and forwards to different bits, and you know, we talk about the 1250 rounds of, and I talk about it in the book, and I'm like, I was training like I was an elite judo player. And I did that year when we said, because me and Toby had a thing about we were going to do 1,000 rolls. Now we're not talking just 1,000 rolls. They had to be 1,000 5-minute specific rounds.
I made up a few of them. Trust me.
Yeah,
I couldn't wait for them to be over.
It was 1,250, and I was hunting them.
Yeah.
If somebody would say there's a guy that just wants to do 5 rounds in Outer Mongolia, I would have been there.
Yeah.
And then that's when you realize maybe there's something going on in my brain. So I wanted to put it down on paper, and literally then I was like, right, I'll send it out to some publishers, and they're not interested unless you're going to be the #1 bestseller. Yeah. Publishers aren't really that interested. So I then started talking to a lady, and I will name her, even though I've not even paid her because she hasn't sent me bills or anything, bless her. She's just been amazing. Her name's Aisha Clearwater, and she did Chris Skelly's wife's book. She was the editor in the editor for that, and the proofreader. So I reached out to her and I sent her Between Throws, and she was like, yeah, it doesn't really ring true to what you want though. This is what I think you should do. So I took her advice and then sent it back to her, and then came back. And I was like, well, look, publishers aren't going to really touch this. And she said, well, have you heard of Kindle Direct Publishing? And I was like, no, what's that? She said, well, basically what you do, you get your manuscript and you upload it to Kindle, and they do the rest. And I went, that sounds pretty decent. So I haven't done it to sell it. I didn't write the book to sell it. I actually wrote it to give to my son.
Yeah.
To give him something to go, like, you know what? You can achieve anything. If you want to achieve something, you can do it. You've just got to put your mind to it and have an addictive personality and a bit of HD on the side and a bit of lunacy to try and do something. And so that's the reason I did it. And it actually, I got probably one of the best recognitions this week, because I'm not academic. I'm not academic at all. My other half, she's got a degree in English Lit. So I said, would you read it? But knowing that she doesn't know some of the stories, even though we've been together 14, 15 years, some of the stuff in there, she doesn't know.
Yeah.
And she read it, and I think she was on the last but one chapter, and she rang me up and she went, Wayne, I'm going to have to tell you this. I'm really enjoying your book.
Wow.
And I went, that was quite a big accolade, because there's some stuff in there I didn't think you would like. She says, I thought you was going to come across like I thought it was going to be a bit of a Dormany kind of book, or I thought you were going to come across brutish.
Yeah.
But she said you come across very, I don't want to say philosophical, because I'm really not, but it's more to do with how I've tried to cope, realizing there's been issues, if that makes sense. So like realizing that, realizing what imposter syndrome was, realizing what an addictive personality was, and me thinking it's normal.
No. Why isn't everyone else like me? I'm like that. Why are you such an unmotivated, lazy sod?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you're just not right.
Well, she said to
that's
me,
it.
Tori said, we were talking today, and I was talking about the book because we were just going through the last changes to get it released for the 4th of April. And we were talking about addictive personality, and I was like, I've really enjoyed doing it because I can now see stuff like when I was a full-time athlete, I had 10 judo kits. And I had 10 judo kits because I thought that was normal. I needed some for competition, some for training, some different weights, some different cuts. That's dedication.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
And then you start doing like I don't know, jiu-jitsu, and I've got 10 jiu-jitsu kits again. And then I'm hunting 1,200 rolls. And then I buy a gym and I've got kit on kit that I needed to upgrade to have another kit. And it's just moves.
Well, I feel really bad because, as you're saying about the 10 kits. So first of all, I've got 31 geese. I don't need 31 geese. Secondly, you've got 10 jiu-jitsu geese, and 2 of them I gave you.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I mean?
You're fueling my addiction.
I'm an enabler. But again, it's that whole thing where it's like, just as you were saying it, talking about not being philosophical. First of all, show me somebody. You would have to be devoid of thought, emotion, forward planning, and reflection to not be philosophical in life. And I know that makes me sound like really. It makes me sound what I am, a 57-year-old man. Where it's like, I always say this: you got guys that can read Ernest Hemingway, and then you get guys who understand Ernest Hemingway. You get guys who you get these gym bros now, and they've got the Marcus Aurelius quotes on them. They're saying memento mori and stuff. And you're like, right, okay, that's cool, mate. But at 35, don't talk to me about a memento mori. I tell you what, when you're 13 years away from being 70, then you can talk about memento mori. Then you can talk about like, oh, I understand where Marcus Aurelius is coming from. You know, the whole thing. I can't influence events that are beyond my influence. I can only influence my feelings on that. And like again, it's so funny you were saying about so ADHD. Like I hated labels, by the way, but this shows how much of an ADHD up OCD guy I am. The minute that I realised that these work for me, I don't mean work. They just basically defined who I was. So like obsessive compulsive disorder is great. Like for me, it's a superpower. Because I'm very highly organised and I don't care about the fact that it's but you're a slave to this routine. No, this routine has kept me alive. If you follow the military, routine is everything. Yeah, because otherwise intrusive thoughts get in. And it was like when you were talking about the kit, and it's like OCD. So what's obsession? So obsession and compulsion. You like that game? Right. I don't think I've got enough geese. Right. So that's the obsession. Compulsion is, guess what? Jeff Bezos can get me a new gi within 15 minutes. You know what I mean? By that drone, I'll get that. And it is funny because everything you were talking about, the imposter syndrome, makes me smile because I've never, ever felt it. Only now I'm starting to get a little bit of this. And maybe it's just because I was a narcissist and when everyone else said I was shit, I proved that I wasn't.
No, but I think we've all got it. I think there's all there somewhere in everyone. And if we're not egotistical, because we're not, and a lot of guys in our industry, the martial arts, especially judo, you don't get many of them, you know, and you sit there and you're like, okay, I was a good judo player. I was okay. I got through, you know, I was semi decent. And then you've got people like, then you've got your peers. Like I talk about it in the book about getting asked to lecture at Bath University, and I'm not from academia, and I was asked to lecture at Bath Uni, and I lectured on I think the title was something like the identification and development of identified talent, or something like that. And I'd done some work with Tudor Bompa and Islam Bali, and I'd worked with British Judo and Leicester Tigers rugby clubs. Again, another imposter syndrome moment. But you know, you're working with these elite squads. And then I'm lecturing at Bath University, which is one of the best universities around. And I looked through the door. And I saw like 4 world champions, 3 Olympic champions. And I said to my pal, Darren Warner, who, again, another great judo player. And I said to Darren, and I said, I don't think I can do this, mate. And he said, what do you mean? I said, have you looked through there? He went, yeah. I said, I don't think I can do it. He went, I said, they're all like, they're elite coaches, they're elite of the elite. And he went, yeah, but they don't know what you know. And it just blew me away. And I was like, right, okay, I can get through this. And then and it was just stuff like that. And again, like I talk about Leicester Tigers, where I was 3 years as their long-term athlete development coach, and basically we were looking at why kids drop out of sport, but working with British Judo and Leicester Tigers. But it's all these little imposter syndrome moments that I seem to have had, sat having breakfast with probably the one of the greatest at the time, the greatest rugby clubs in Europe, which housed most of the England squads. And I'm sat there having breakfast. I was just like, this is just surreal. So many things.
Oh, man. Well, this is going to help us wrap up now. So, first of all, what's the future hold for you? And then secondly, which you'll be able to wrap up on, is just how you can get the book, links, and then anything else.
So the future, who knows? Who knows? At the moment, I'm quite happy. I'm back in the leisure industry. I'm working at Bannatynes in Tamworth, and Duncan, if you're listening, it's all good there. It's all good. I think it's a really nice company to work for, on the whole, as leisure companies go by. I'm actually my GM, because I'm the fitness manager. The GM at Bannatynes is Gary Holloway, who was my GM when I worked the door in Hinckley. So he ran a nightclub. So he came out of nightclubs. He ran G's in Coventry.
No.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, wow.
He ran some clubs in around the Sky Dome and that kind of area.
Yeah.
And then he's now in the leisure industry, and he's at Bannatyne. So I've just done a presentation for all the GMs at Bannatynes on what we can learn from elite athletes and elite environments into the commercial sector. So I'd like to think that I could stay at somewhere like Bannatynes and progress into like an area role or a training role or some kind of role. I don't know. If I could get to GM, I'd be super happy. But I'm happy where I am. It gives me time to train. It gives me time to get out in the motorhome and be a little bit of a nomad and go and visit my friends jiu-jitsu and just doing some sessions. So that's basically what the future holds immediately. The book, like I said, it was never done to make tons of money, but if I can, then why not? It'll be released on April the 4th, and it'll be on Amazon. I'm going to try and do a couple of little tours at clubs where I turn up, I'll deliver a session, and then I'll sell the book. So I'm hoping to do a couple of those where I can get copies of the book, take them with me. I'm just about to do like some t-shirts that I can take with me as well. One of them is the Old Man Jits t-shirts. I'm making a
beautiful.
And my title was Just Like Any Great Old Man, They're Making a Comeback. So the t-shirts are going to come back, and I'm doing one called Get Comfortable Being Uncomfortable. Again, more with the ethos of the way that I think and I like to train and I like to do stuff. So I'm going to try and do some stuff like that. That's going to be on waynelakin.co.uk. So that's pretty much the future of that. And like I say, the stuff is just really I just want to be I just want to be a better human. Just want to go around and do some judo, do some jiu-jitsu, train, work, get my money, go around in the motorhome and do some, just be a nomad. Love it.
Yeah. Mate, there's what else can we add to that? All I'd say is, personally from me, thank you for the decades now of friendship, the decades of inspiration and perspiration. The fact that, as I said, I still maintain one of the most enjoyable but toughest roles I've ever had in my life, on several times. And as I said, like, all I'll say is a recommendation from you. Like, you got to remember, you were there when I got my black belt. I was there when you got your blue belt. You know what I mean? Yeah. We were there when Nathan Leviton got his black belt, and we had to convince him, because he goes, you can't even get, because I wasn't even on the mat. I'm not training anyone. And you're like, but mate, you were a black belt when we met you. And now when we're getting to that level, but just, mate, I mean it from the bottom of my heart. Just thank you. You're a wonderful friend. As I always say, like both of us are the same, both nomads, both Ronins. Yeah. And like, as I say it to Alpiza and a lot, for somebody who, my wife always says, you don't really have that many friends. And I said, no, but I've got really good ones. And the other one that gets me, the one that gets me is, I hate the fact that people think that you have to live in each other's lug holes to be mates. So I need to see you every week. And you're like, sound like the neediest girlfriend I never had in the 80s. You know what I mean? Yeah. So can we hook up every now and again? Yeah, not in that way, obviously. Yeah. But you know where I'm coming from, Wayne.
No, I think,
thank you.
Mate, absolutely right. I say the same thing. I don't have a big circle of friends, but the ones I've got, I can pick up at any time.
Yeah.
And you've proved that with me. We've had conversations where we haven't spoken for 6 months, and then we talk like we spoke yesterday.
Yeah, that's it. Well, thanks again, brother. And thanks for
mate.
everything.
More than welcome. Loved it, and thank you for having me on. I love, you know what it is. That's why we spend 3 hours talking.
Start the spring season off right with a new pair of Tecovas Western boots. Handcrafted in over 200 steps from genuine leather, they're built to last and feel broken in the moment you put them on. From cowhide to exotic leathers, Tecovas blends timeless style with all-day comfort. Pair them with premium denim, Western shirts, and accessories for an effortless, polished look. Shop quality Western goods in-store or online at tecovas.com.
The right window treatments change everything. Your sleep, your privacy, the way every room looks and feels. At Blinds.com, we've spent 30 years making it surprisingly simple to get exactly what your home needs. We've covered over 25 million windows and have 50,000 five-star reviews to prove we deliver. Whether you DIY it or want a pro to handle everything from measure to install, we have you covered. Real design professionals, free samples, zero pressure. Right now, get up to 45% off site-wide, plus get a free professional measure at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions apply.